Hello, everybody out there. Scott Jimenez, Senor Mississippi here, coming with you with another video. These are going to be directed towards teachers, and these are going to be directed towards those teachers who want to begin or consider their journey to the National Board Certified Teacher with a certificate in world languages. So, I've got mixed emotions. So I did certify. I certified this past weekend, and I'll be honest, I did not expect to certify. My initial scores were very low, and I'll talk about that later. But I certified. I cried, and I'm here to make this video to hopefully give some other teachers out there some insight on what this process is like and the demand that it does require. Because when I started this process about 2.5 years ago, I went to a local kind of boot camp where offered at the local university here, University of Mississippi. I was very fortunate that every state within the public, every university within the public university within the Mississippi has a world-class teaching program, and it is pretty much it's a guiding program that partners you with mentors through the process of the National Board Certification. So we're going to run through all 4 components. This video is going to be probably long, but if it is something that you are interested in, I think I can provide you with some great insight. And I will try and chop this video up into parts so that you can jump to certain timestamps in order to discuss the different components. So we're actually going to start with the portfolio section first. So component 1 is the test itself. And then the components 2, 3, and 4 are the portfolio submission. So you're the writing portion of the National Board Certification. So, and again, I have a very short script. Okay, so just with some basic notes. A lot of the basic, more detailed information you can find on the National Board's website. Again, and some of this will be a little foggy for me because it's been about a year and a half since I submitted my first components. So we'll talk first about component 2, which is more or less a differentiated instruction component in which the national boards are looking for you to show your ability to differentiate instruction to 2 different students that are 2 different types of learners in order to show your ability to cater to those different types of learning styles and to ideally show progress between those 2 students and their progress from your initial formative assessment to your summative assessment. So I am a comprehensible input teacher. I do not have a textbook. I've not had a textbook for about 5 years now. And I do not give any more. I don't give tests anymore. So when I was tackling this this component, the most concrete type of assessment that I could submit, because you have to submit both the formative assessment and summative assessment of these 2 students. So if you are a CI teacher and most of your assessments are writing assessments, then I would strongly recommend that you do use those assessments. So pretty much I tackled this with you have to choose your students very carefully. I chose a heritage learner and then also a student of a sibling that I already taught. So I kind of knew some of the tendencies of this, what type of family this student comes from, because the national boards are always looking for you to show your knowledge of students. This is a very key part of one of the standards, or knowledge of students. And so I wanted to show and prove that I did know that one particular student very well. And I also wanted to show my ability to teach and instruct a heritage learner, which, as you probably know, they have very different needs and expectations. So in a nutshell, pretty much my first formative assessment was a writing assessment that they did on a movie talk that I had done in class with them. And then my goal was to show progress using the preterite tense. Okay, so this was a Spanish 1 class, and it was in the 2nd semester. So a lot of times you want to be able to cite, your expectations of certain types of learners and what you think they should be able to do. So we were kind of approaching that according to ACTFL's levels of learners. So we were approaching these intermediate range-ish of kids of writing, and I wanted to be able them to kind of start dabbling in the past tense. And so what I did was I would take their writing and then just identify as many past tense errors as I could, specifically in the preterite tense. And then for the summative, we used the Senor. We did more or less a retell of a Senor Willie story, one of the Billy La Bufanda videos. I can't remember which one it was. And then I had them pretty much retell the story as best they can. So if you're looking at the component 2 submission guidelines, and it's going to have lots of questions, pretty much for all of the portfolio components, you're going to want to follow and answer these questions that they submit in the portfolio guidelines to a T. A common strategy would be, it's like, if the question is, how did you analyze student feedback for student number A? And you answer, I analyzed student feedback for student number A by dot, 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 dot. And you have to be able to document and show evidence for all these sorts of things. So for the component 2, you're looking at 15 pages of the written commentary, which is pretty much your commentary broken into multiple parts. And then probably another, looks like I've 2 pages. And when I say pages, I mean double-spaced. So they might be single-spaced in the instructions, but I'm going to consider them double-spaced for all sakes and purposes. So for component 2, you're looking at about 17 pages worth of writing. I scored a 2 on my component 2. This is on a scale of 0 to 4, where 4 is the highest and 2 is, and 0 is the lowest, as in you didn't submit really anything. So, I was disappointed with that score, obviously. And if you give me a second, I'm actually going to pull up my score report here, so I can give you some kind of the feedback notes that were given to me regarding why I scored the way I did, because I think there's a lot of ambiguity regarding to how these things are scored, and so sometimes I think it's helpful to share the feedback that I was provided in order for y'all to kind of get a feeling for what things you need to make sure that you do in order for your scores to come back the way you want them. So give me 1 second while I do this. Okay, so for component number 2, some of the feedback I received. You may wish to provide clear evidence of your own knowledge of the subject through instruction and assignments that develop individual students' abilities. So I'm guessing they're looking for knowledge of maybe a broader sort of scope for which I was assessing them. You may wish to provide clear evidence that you set appropriate goals for student learning and connect those goals to differentiated instruction and individual student needs. I will admit, this is something I struggled with deeply, with goal setting. Goal setting is going to be a major part in your written commentary, when you're looking to show student growth, is having students set individual goals. So if you are doing lots of writing as a CI teacher, I would strongly recommend that you have your students keep writing portfolios, pretty much where they have they track all of their writing in a folder, and they also have like a writing reflection sheet in which they document after each writing what they did well, what they struggled with, and maybe have them set personal goals for their next writing. And then my final feedback was, you may wish to provide clearer evidence that you give appropriate individual feedback and next steps to each student. This is another thing I've struggled with. I'll admit it. I've struggled with feedback. So I struggle with student feedback. One thing I think is probably a next step for me is to start scheduling, kind of student conference days where I meet with students on an individual basis and have the rest of the students working on independent work while I'm meeting with students on an individual basis, maybe in the hallway or close to my sitting area. So that is component 2, and kind of how I struggled with it. So again, I got a 2 on that. I was very I was disappointed, obviously, with that result, because I thought I had a good, strong submission, as well as my mentor. She thought that as well. So anywho, we're going to move on to component 4, which was, I'm going in the order in which I submitted these. So I submitted components 2 and 4 on my first year. There's the bell. And then component 3 in the test, component 1 on my second year. So now I'd like to talk about component 4. This component is, I think, considered by most one of the more confusing components of the National Board Certification. It revolves around addressing a professional need of you as a teacher, and then also identifying and addressing a student need of your students in your classroom. So, with that being said, I chose, and if I was going to do this again, so this was the first component I chose to work on. Going back to the advice my mentor gave me, she told me not to do this one first. I definitely would have taken that advice and saved this for last because it is kind of the more complex component. It helps to learn kind of how to write for national boards before you tackle probably the most difficult component. So, in a nutshell, this one is identifying these needs as a professional and what you do about it, and then analyzing your efforts and how that, if it came to fruition, and then also identifying, analyzing the student need, and then your efforts to address that, and to if that came to fruition. So there is a lot of self-reflection that happens in component 4. Your page breakdown, you've got about, and again, this is whether they're single spaced, I'm considering them, I'm kind of adding to make everything double spaced, about 10 pages of forms, double spaced, in which you are identifying and addressing these needs, and then assessment materials that you use throughout your, you must submit assessment materials to the boards of your assessments that you use to identify the student need and how you addressed it. And then finally, 12 pages of written commentary. So total, with 10 pages of forms, 4 pages addressing assessment materials in your personal and student need, and 12 pages of written commentary, you're coming to around 26 pages for component 4. And so it is the lengthiest component and probably the most difficult. So what I did for this component is I was teaching Spanish 3 that year, and I was super excited to tackle this component because we have a tracking system in my school, in my Spanish department. So if I teach a student for Spanish 1, I will then also teach them for Spanish 2 and Spanish 3 if the class makes. So this was a Spanish 3 class of 12 students that for the majority of them, I'd had all 3 years of their Spanish. And so I thought that could really strengthen my knowledge of students and just kind of, I could really make that shine of how much I know these students because I'm familiar with them because I've taught them for so long. We chose to do it, again, on preterite tense, and it sounds like a recurring theme, right? But it's just when it comes to writing, just their abilities to place accent marks and use preterite tense and irregular preterite tense, it just, to me, it seemed like a solid idea to base my growth on. And so what we did, we had writing assessments throughout the semester, and I tracked every student's word count as well as their mistakes that they made throughout each writing assessment, and then finally submitted the results based on their formative assessment all the way to the summative, and tracked which students had grown the most, and to show that I had seemingly addressed this need where students were making less mistakes writing in the preterite tense, and also their word count had increased. One of the other student needs that I addressed was like student confidence. And so I was like, okay, how do I get my students more confident with their Spanish speaking ability and their comprehension skills? So I scheduled a college visit to the university here, University of Mississippi, and we sat in on a Spanish 2 class, a college Spanish 2 class, and knowing that my students would be able to understand probably the majority of the flow of the conversation, I was hoping that would boost their confidence. As opposed, when it comes to professional needs, as mentioned, I'm a dominantly CI teacher. I use dominantly CI strategies, and I was like, hey, that's a need that I need to address. I need to be able to branch out beyond just CI stuff. And so I met with one of my old Spanish professors here at the university, and we talked about task-based learning and what task-based learning can do, kind of some different projects that teachers can use, as well as the benefits that it has for students. So after all that, after submitting tons of data, after submitting tons of assessment resources and tons of student work, I got a 1 on that component. That was heartbreaking. So at this point in my national board journey, I had scored a 2 and a 1 on 2 components. This was utterly defeating, and I felt like a failure. I felt like a failure as a teacher. It's just there's no other way to put it. So if you are struggling, if you are already in the board's process, you know, and I'll kind of talk about this on the back end, but just don't let this process define who you are as a teacher, because it is a process that not many choose to go down, and most of the people that choose to go down this road is because they are great teachers that want to get better, and they want to, you know, strive to improve their skill and hone their profession. So that was component 4. And again, I even talked to another certified teacher, and he told me the same story about all this data he had collected, and he had his students take the ACTFL's Apple test, and he reported that data and their growth and all, and he got a 1 as well. So I have a feeling that maybe component 4 is just a lot of confusion, and to say, obviously, I mean, I don't know. I couldn't. So there's my advice. I can't help you much. So that's component 4. Okay, moving on to the last component of the portfolio submission is component 3. This component is the one where you've probably heard about, is where you videotape your class, your instruction, and then you submit both those samples along with written commentary and forms that analyze and reflect upon both those videos. The videos themselves, so you get it has to be at least 10 minutes and no more than 15 minutes. So it's a very short glimpse into what your classroom really looks like. So they also encourage you to pick 2 different types or styles of instruction or lessons. So for me, the first thing I chose to do, something way out of my wheelhouse, way out of my comfort zone, were stations. You know, choosing to do stations, you know, kind of encourages that independent student reflection and work aside from teacher, you know, and letting students, you know, independently kind of negotiate meaning on their own. And so pretty much I designed a unit on school spirit. I designed a unit on school spirit and kind of also the cultural kind of identity of school spirit in the United States, and I contrasted that to school spirit in Mexico, or the lack thereof. And so we had different stations in which students discussed with me in the target language about how our school can improve school spirit. I had a video where one of my friends that's still residing in Mexico, she gave a little a speaking a listening comprehension of her speaking about the lack of school spirit in Mexico, and how, you know, the importance of sports culture in Mexico versus here. And then also had a writing station where students were writing to the principal about their ideas of improving school spirit in the school. You got to throw in a Venn diagram. Had a beautiful triple Venn diagram here on the board between contrasting the school spirit at our school, the school spirit at a local rival school, and then the school spirit of like a potentially Mexican high school. And so through these stations, you know, I had to get an independent. You got to get an outsider to come in and videotape everything that's going. It helps to kind of coach them, whether this is a colleague or another student, to coach them like, listen, like when you see students that are like in the zone, I want you to zoom over there and like catch it on video. Or if you see me in the zone, like we're having a good dialogue with the students in the teacher group, please make sure you come over and capture that. So I was able to get a great video with that. And then my other unit I did and if you're a CI teacher, you're probably very familiar with this, was we were acting out a story that we were doing a story asking and story acting at the same time. And this was a story about the Argentinian sport pato. So, you always want to look for ways to tie in culture. So knowledge of culture is a huge standard for the national boards. So that's why I tried to tie in that Mexico aspect of school spirit in the school spirit unit, and then tying in the Argentinian sport of pato and los gauchos into the other unit. And so pretty much we got to record, a colleague of mine recorded me narrating the story in Spanish, and I even had some props and some stuff. And then my student actors, they hammed it up, did a great job. And they acted out like a game of pato that I narrated, and there was tons of student involvement. And so I mentioned this in my commentary. It was like, the stations was something that I was, not typically used to doing, while the story asking, story acting, write and discuss, we did a write and discuss after that. That was something that I was very used to. So with component 3, so again, you're submitting 4 pages of written commentary per video, so that's 8 pages, and then various forms on each video comes out to 14 pages of forms, so about 7 pages of forms per video, which brings you to a total of about 22 pages. So if you're keeping count, that's 17 pages for component 2, 22 pages for component 3, that brings us to 39, and then 26 more pages for component 4, that's 55. So 55, and again, everybody's commentary is going to be different, but they strongly encourage you to use up every single page. You don't ever leave any blank space on your written commentary. So you're looking at 50 plus pages of writing if you're wanting to tackle this process. So leading up into this component, with my scores of 2 and a 1, I knew I had to really knock out this component as well as my test. So components 3 and the test are actually weighted higher. They're worth more points. And I can't remember, you can find the weight on your own on the national boards. But I scored a 4 on the component 3. So perfect score on the component 3. Really boosted my, it really kind of set me up to be, well, I'll tell you later, but, component 4 really helped, that 4 on component 3 helped carry me. So that is the breakdown of component 3. Now let's talk about component 1, the test. Component 1. Now, here's the other rub with world language certification. It is the only test, it is the only certificate in all of national boards that requires something extra. So maybe you've seen my other video about ACTFL and the OPIC. Well, yeah, you have to get advanced slow on your speaking and your on the OPI with speaking and writing proficiency test. So you can watch. So in nutshell version, I came back from Costa Rica with taking some students there last March and thinking, okay, I can knock this out no problem. And I got intermediate high, took it again with some actual prep, see the video with more descriptions, but finally got my advanced low. If you are looking to do national board certification, it is strongly, strongly, strongly recommended that you get your ACTFL, OPI, and WPT first, because there have been instances where teachers wait to do their ACTFL at the end. They finish all of their components, and they are capable, they have the scores to be certified, but cannot score that advanced low that they need, and they're just kind of out of luck. So I strongly recommend that you do the ACTFL, OPI, and writing proficiency test first before you move forward on all the other components. But so in addition to the ACTFL, you have your component 1 subject area test. I gotta say, it was a doozy to study for. I was very fortunate in which, well, I say fortunate. If there's any positive thing to come out of COVID, our school was closed pretty much after spring break. And so I had all of spring break, all of the fourth 9 weeks to study and prepare for my component 1 test. So we'll first talk about the multiple choice test portion. It's 40 questions, and the best way you can study is just by searching for things online. I did a lot of studying using the Quizlet flashcards that are already out there. I did a lot of studying of a Google Doc that I'll post down here in the comments. But a lot of it is stuff that you can't. There's so much material you can't study for all of it. The best you can do is prepare and read as much as you can. A lot of linguistical theories on there, a lot of Noam Chomsky, and shoot, what's the guy's name? I forgot the guy's name that came up with CI. Krashen. Krashen's 5 and I've already forgotten all of it. I mean, these are things I should know as a CI teacher, but Krashen's 5-6 theories. But there's also going to be just questions on there that you will not be able to know unless you just have experience within that country. Like, for example, there's some questions on there that ask about situational language usage, like the usage of slang or phrases that would be colloquial to certain areas. One question was asked me. It was like, in Mexico, it's common. What is a common response to when someone calls your name or something? And one of the options was Monday, and I only knew that just because I spent my semester abroad in Mexico, where I would always call Mama Monday. So it's like small little nuanced things like that. They're just tough to study for, but your best bet is to study for all of your know your linguistical theory, and also the linguistical terms for certain and dialects for certain areas of the Spanish-speaking world, such as the Thutheo and the Sisay. I can't even remember them. So, but I'll post the Google Doc that I did use to study. Another great resource is the Facebook group. It's the World Languages for National Board Certification. I can't remember the exact resources I pulled from there, but I did pull some resources from there that were helpful in studying for the writing components. So for the writing components, this was where it also carried me. I got so exercise 1 is you're asked to analyze student work, and a key part of this is making sure that you address the level of learner that the prompt is saying that this learner is. So that way you can cite in your writing. It is a common mistake for intermediate mid learners to struggle with imperfect versus preterite tense usage, blah, 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 blah. So it's very important that you know your actual levels of learners and the typical types of mistakes or the proficiency that it takes to get to reach those certain levels, right? It's like, what does it take writing-wise for an intermediate high student to go bump up to advanced low? Or what does it take for a novice high to bump up to intermediate and that sort of thing? So analyzing that student work, and then also coming up with a plan to address the recurring problem that student had. So that's exercise 1. Exercise 2, all about culture. The example question that they give in the packet is, I think, to name a landmark in the Spanish-speaking world and discuss its significance historically, economically, politically, culturally, and you go through all these things. So because it's such a broad topic, it helped me anyway to choose a very specific country and double down on all the aspects of that country that I could. So for me, so it was Costa Rica. So I've been to Costa Rica 5 times now. It's the country with which I'm very familiar. The people, the landmarks, I've seen a lot of the country. And so then I decided, well, let me just double down and learn a little bit more. So I studied a lot about the cultural and political history of Costa Rica that I wasn't really tuned into until studying for my boards. I studied and memorized a lot of names, especially regarding the Banana Republic and United Fruit Company, the political and economic kind of turmoil that happened with that, and the development of railways in there. And so I can't explicitly say the question that I got because I think that's against the rules, but I did get a prompt that allowed me to talk about a certain aspect within Costa Rica that I had studied for. So maybe you're super familiar with Spain or super familiar with Mexico. Just double down and learn as much as you can regarding the cultural and historical and political aspects of those countries. That way you're ready to address them when you get to the writing exercise on your cultural knowledge. And then finally is your exercise 3 is your writing on they provide you with a resource, and you must come up with a cross-curricular lesson plan using that resource while you're also collaborating with a person outside your subject area. So again, I can't tell you my exact prompt, but I would say the great model that I studied, I think, was called PACE. And so it's the PACE model, or the PACE instruction, like presentation, something. Again, this is, once I was through with it, we were done. So it's called the PACE model. And I only cite that specific model because I got a 4 on both exercise 1 and 3. So there's a lot of resources out there that tell you how to, or at least that were on the Facebook group, on how to study and prepare to write for exercises 1 and 3, because those are the ones where you can kind of prepare, what you're going to write. Kind of regardless of what the topic is, you can say, I plan to implement a 5-day lesson using the PACE model. On day 1, I will blah, 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 blah. On day 2, the other thing I would strongly recommend is do some sit-down practice timed writings on your own. Make up a prompt that's going to focus within those 3 parts, and then just practice writing underneath a time crunch. On the cultural writing, I got a 3.25. And then I actually did not do hot on the multiple choice one. I got like 2.8 something, but my average was like a 3.5 for component 1. So despite my low scores of 2 and 1, the test and the video component and the extra weight that those 2 components carried me to national board certification. Whoopee! So quick little last thoughts here. Would I recommend every world language teacher to pursue national boards? No. It's very tough to say this after I've accomplished my national board certification, but looking back, I do not think I would pursue this. Just because it caused a lot of self-doubt, and it caused me to kind of change the kind of instruction that I'm most comfortable with, and that and the type of instruction that I know my students benefit from. Now, granted, it's good for teachers to try new things, obviously. But like, I would not say that this. A lot of people talk about the national board process. Oh, it will make you such a better teacher. I can't say. I have to wholeheartedly disagree. Like, I don't feel like I am any better of a teacher from the national board certification. And someone posed this question to me: well, is it a process of making you a better teacher, or is it a process certifying that you are a great teacher? I don't know, but it was a lot of hoops to jump through, and a lot of work, a lot of stress. And granted, of course, I'm happy and blessed to be done. My state offers a $6,000 pay raise to national board certified teachers. If you didn't know, Mississippi is not well known for paying its public school teachers a lot of money, so the national board certification is a incentive. But it is a long process. I would also strongly recommend, if you are going to do this, you've got to reach out and look for your resources for mentors. I could not have done this without my mentor. It was actually a funny story. So, I'm the first world language certificate to go through to finish to certify through the the world class teaching program at the University of Mississippi. There's not many world language certified teachers out there. The last I looked, I think I'm one of 10 now active certified teachers in my entire state. So my mentor was an art teacher, a middle school art teacher in Maine. Shout out to Danette if you stuck through that. You're watching this, Danette. But the fact that she knows, she was a great mentor in which she may not have known my content area, but she knew what to look for with the writing and how to address the questions. I would also strongly recommend you find, if you do happen to have someone else on this journey with you, to read each other's submissions, read each other's components. So I was blessed to have a colleague at the other school here in town that was also going through component 3 while I was working on it, and so we read each other's commentary and helped each other tweak our commentary and kind of proofread that. So, right, well, that is it. Again, if it's something that you really feel like calls to you, then go for it. If not, it's okay. And my wife told me this. She's like, even if you had not certified, that would not have changed the fact that you are still a great teacher. And I feel that I do wholeheartedly feel that way. This is my 15th year teaching. I feel like I'm a great teacher, and I've honed my craft over the last, especially within the last 5 to 7 years when I've kind of started to do CI. I will say I think CI is a great route of teaching, style of teaching to approach certification. So if you have any other questions or comments, hit me up in the comments below. I hope this video was insightful to someone. I know it's probably pretty lengthy, but hopefully it will provide some insight and assistance to those looking, because when I started this journey, I had no clue what I was doing. So, God bless, Godspeed, adios, y buena suerte.